Welcome back. Opposition party leaders will hold a national convention in Ekurhuleni next month to discuss a possible pact in the run-up to next year's elections. Items on the agenda include the values and principles that will guide a pact government, formulation of a joint minimum program of action, rules of engagement during the upcoming election campaign, and a formula to form a cabinet after the 2024 elections. And now for more on this, we are now joined by Professor Mazwe Majola, a leadership expert from the Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us here on the late edition. Let's first start off here. What are your thoughts when it comes to this latest move by opposition parties? We've known for the past couple of years that when it comes to coalitions, that many of them have not been able to find themselves. You know, do you think that this is a step in the right direction by opposition parties?
Good evening, Bali, and good evening to the viewers and listeners. Look, it's going to be a tall order. It's not going to be easy because, unfortunately, South African political leaders are full of themselves. You know, they have so much ego, and you. Can we imagine that we are putting together 7 different parties who are independent? They have different traditions, cultures, they have different values, principles, they have different policies, they have different visions, they have different leadership styles. And then we are pulling them together and say, let's work together. In that, you've got a party which is called Democratic Alliance DA, which is suffering from superiority complex. Each and every time they are forming coalitions, that coalition must be led by DA. There's never been a place where DA can say, let's form a coalition, but Freedom Front plus take it, or Action take it. So that's a problem. That's what they are going to be confronted with as they are going there to engage and to negotiate whether is this going to materialize, you know, and more especially when you form coalitions before elections, it's very problematic. Because these different political parties, they have their own members. Now, let's just make an example here. You know, let's just say Action SA member says, I joined Action SA because of its leadership, its policies, values, etc. Now, I left DA for the certain reason when I joined Action SA. Now, before the elections, already leaders are talking about forming a pact. So it means that this member is going to say that I'm voting my party, but who is going to be in bed with a party that I don't subscribe to in terms of their policies and their values. So there are so many intricacies and so many challenges and problems. But that is why they are having these 2 days to iron out all this and say, let's talk. And I like when they say in that document, they say anyone is coming there voluntarily, and it doesn't mean that by going there you agree or you accept what we are saying. So we are going to see we only witness what will emerge from the convention.
And Professor, you know, we've seen the DA being criticized largely by a number of political parties, especially in a number of the metro municipalities. It did co-govern with other political parties. Do you think that this time around, you the DA will have the capacity to be able to entrust other political parties to take over. We've seen it with, the coalition government here in Johannesburg. We've also seen it with Ekurhuleni, where the bigger parties take the back seat and then allow for the smaller parties to be, the mayor and to be the speaker. Do you think that the DA has the capacity to allow others to lead in their coalition?
DA over time has demonstrated that in its DNA, it doesn't have the capacity to work with other parties if it's not going to be one who's going to be leading that coalition. So wherever they govern, when they form coalition, it must be a DA-led coalition. So the question is, people like UDM, Action SA, IFP and others, will they allow that? So we've seen in the metros what has happened, especially here in Johannesburg, that they couldn't find one another in terms of who is going to lead, because that when it comes to political leaders, it's about their own self-interest. It's about me, who's going to lead. We've got 7 leaders who are leading different independent parties, and then there should be one then out of them who will lead them. And knowing all these leaders, it's going to be very difficult for them to allow for another one to lead them. However, DA has worked very well in KZN with IFP, especially at the local government level. They've assisted IFP to win many by-elections with DA and IFP coalition there. So you don't know whether they may apply that even at national level, but I mean, from what they've shown us, definitely doesn't seem like they do have that capacity.
And Prof, we know that South Africans have criticized political parties, for the instability we continue to see at, municipalities across the country, especially where it is run through a coalition. Do you think that this is the answer here when it comes to South Africans finally seeing stability in terms of governance, where political parties are now coming together to try? I know that you have said that, most times it is about political parties themselves and what they will be gaining from a coalition. But do you think that this is what we need for political parties to come together so that we can see stability in any government formed?
Look, we have seen and witnessed that coalitions government have worked in other countries, especially in Europe. But I've argued, and I still argue even now, that South Africa is not ready. Political leaders are not matured enough for this type of government or this type of government system. Unfortunately, yes, it does seem that 2024 will be led by coalition, either ANC-led coalition or DA-led coalition. But unfortunately, let's hope that they've learned lessons from metros, but also that there will be some legislation and regulation that will be able to regulate how coalitions will work. Because as things stand now, it's chaos. It's just free for all. I mean, you can just say that these political leaders really, it's more about power and then the more about their self-interest.
And Prof, my last question to you. I mean, the DA has made it quite clear that it will not work with the EFF. The Action SA party has also made it clear that it refuses to work with the ANC. And it's quite clear here that they've sort of shut them out. What does it mean going into the 2024 elections when you are shutting out the ANC and the EFF from forming some sort of coalition government?
Well, it's quite dangerous because politics is about numbers. You don't know what will happen after the elections in 2024. So that is why other political parties, they say, look, let's talk to each other in case, and let's try to build relationships so that in case numbers don't gel, we can then rope in different people. But when you go to an election and you just say categorically that I'm not going to work with so and so, then really, unless you've accepted that it's either you become opposition forever, because Action SA, with as things stand now, will not be able to win elections alone. DA will not win elections alone. So that's why they're trying to create this pact. When they go there, and then they say, I'm not going to work with this one and this one, already we are closing doors. And in politics, they say there are no permanent enemies and permanent friends, because you don't know what tomorrow holds. Right. And again, even in this 7 political leaders pact, we have heard that Freedom Front Plus is pushing a declaration or an undertaking when they go there, when they will say, look, no one should among us should ever work with the ANC after the elections.
All right, Professor Majola, thank you so much for your time. That is Professor Mazwe Majola, leadership expert at Worldwide Institute of Leadership and Development, talking about that national convention that will take place in August, where a number of opposition parties have been invited.